Early in 2016, I decided to start dating again after I'd separated from my husband about a year before. So I thought, I'm ready to meet someone. I'd like to, find someone to do things that I love doing with. And so I went on a dating app, and it was Slim Pickings back in 2016.
I think it's still Slim Pickings.
Still Slim Pickings. I came across a man called Max DeVita who I matched with, and I met him, and he was in his early 40s. He told me he was a chief financial officer for a family office. And we started a relationship, and we were both in our early 40s. So it was a fairly slow burn, I would say. We didn't have lots of time to spend together, pretty much every second weekend when my daughter was with her dad. And we just enjoyed doing things like running and paddleboarding and surfing and being in the ocean and, dinners and picnics, and really pretty simple, boring early 40s type of dating scenario, really.
Sounds nice to me. Very wholesome.
Very wholesome. We progressed our relationship over the course of nearly 18 months. And it wasn't until I woke up one morning in mid 2017 to a Crime Stoppers video of a man being arrested outside of his Bondi apartment with his face blurred out. But of course, without a shadow of a doubt, I knew that man was my boyfriend, except it wasn't Max DeVita, it was Hamish McLaren. Of course, I was in a relationship with this man, and I loved him and I trusted him. And it wasn't until sort of being with the police that day and finding out more, and them telling me a few pieces of information, that I could then go, and research who Hamish McLaren actually was. And that's when my mind started turning to the money. And the police basically asked me, they said, look, you need to go away and you need to put all of your information together to make a statement. So I had to trawl back through, a year and a half of my life, every text message, every email, every mention of a bank account, superannuation, all the documentation, bank statements, transfers, everything. And through that process over the next 3 weeks is when I realized that, the full amount of money that I had lost. But I guess, to be honest, at that time, I wasn't entirely sure that I had lost it, because I thought that these investments were in my name. Mm. And, the police were sort of, they were pretty vague. They were like, look, we think it's probably gone, but, we're looking into it and we're doing the investigation. And I couldn't really talk to anyone else about it because it was a legal matter at that point. It did become clear over the coming weeks. And then as time went on, I realised pretty quickly that I was never going to see that money again.
And how much was it exactly?
I lost $317,000.
How did that work exactly? So I think what first comes to mind when you hear that someone has been conned or, gone through intimate fraud is, I think of, catfish online and they convince people to send money for, their sick family or whatever it is. It wasn't like that with Max or Hamish, right?
No, it's what I would describe as a long con. And I think there's a lot of us that see those stories on the news or on a current affair and you sort of have this vision of people that lose money as sort of a lonely middle-aged woman sitting in her lounge room looking for love on the internet, and suddenly she is, contacted by some prince in some other country and suddenly she's lost her life savings. And this was a very intimate and deep and long con. So, he sort of manipulated me, I guess, over the course of the 18 months to a point where I gave him my life savings. So if he had have knocked on my door in the first 2 weeks and said, hey, I've got a great investment deal, chuck all your money over to me, I 100% wouldn't have done it, right? Because, that's just ludicrous. But when someone weasels their way into your life and creates this, I can only describe it as a movie where, you know, everything that he said, everything he did, every look, every email, every text message, every conversation, every person he brought into the movie, the Bloomberg monitors on his kitchen table that he constantly tinkering with, the conversations he'd have with people in his back office about trades he was making, everything over a long period of time just kind of made sense. And it made sense that he was the investment professional that he said he was. In the same way that I would talk about marketing and, you know, running campaigns and doing communications, that over a period of time, if I talk enough about that, people believe what you say. The continuous conversations that we had over that period of time set me up, and it was very intentional on his part, I believe, to set up this moment in time when he did finally ask me about my superannuation and who the super fund was with and how much I was paying in fees and all of this sort of stuff, that, you know, when he said, look, I can do that for you. This is what I do for a job. I can do a lot better than what you're getting. I want you to be financially independent, you know, and all splattered together with some beautiful compliments about how hard I work and, you know, all this sort of stuff that when it came time, all my confirmation bias had kicked in, and I was like, he's the perfect person to manage my money. And, you know, looking back, it seems so ridiculous, but this was, you know, this was sort of and I sort of describe it as the insidious nature of, you know, of this type of fraud. It's not one conversation, it's death by 1,000 cuts. And after that 1,000th conversation or email or text message or, you know, vision of what you think this person is and what they can do, you have no questions in your mind about. And I didn't suspect anything. When you don't suspect somebody is, you know, trying to betray or fool you, and you think they have your best interests at heart and you believe that they love you, then of course that was the right decision for me to make at the time.
In your book, you talk about how you feel like he sort of catered parts of himself to fit what you wanted in a partner.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about that and how he sort of, what do you think he did exactly to deceive you, to gain your trust?
I describe him as an incredible shapeshifter. So what I know about him now is that he had a different persona for different people. So I was in an intimate relationship with him. But for other people, he was a barrister. For someone else, he was a businessman. For someone else, he was something else. And for me, what he did was he was very, very good at mirroring. So all he had to do essentially was listen to the things that I said about what I wanted out of life, what my values were, what my morals were, how I wanted to spend my time, what I was looking for in a relationship, where I wanted to spend my future. And he just presented those things back to me over time. And he was a phenomenal listener. When you're dating and, you know, you in your 40s or even in your 30s or 20s, like to sit with a man who will actually sit with you and listen and talk through things, that was really appealing to me. But, you know, of course, he was using it for ill intent. He'd just reflect those things back to me. I think some of the other red flags were he didn't have a digital footprint. Which I did try and look into a few times. I asked him about it. And I think, you know, in this day and age, it's really, really odd not to have anything written about you on the internet, whether it be your job, some article you've appeared in some local newspaper 15 years ago. Like, there's always something. And he didn't have a social footprint. Of course, he didn't have social media. But I've got friends that aren't on social media, so that's not too weird. But not to have a digital footprint, I think, was very, very strange. And then I think some of the other things were like just not really meeting or having exposure to any close friends or family. So I did meet some people throughout that 18 months, but you know, I'd asked to go and meet his sister, who he was very close with, and I'd met her husband, and I hadn't met their children, but he'd talk about them all the time. They were always on the phone, and I'd say, let's go let's go see them. Let's go meet them. I really want to meet them. Or they'd be up in Sydney, and it always happened to be at a time when, when I had my daughter with me, and I said, that's okay. I'll get a babysitter. I'd really like to meet them. And everything was always like future promised. Like, yeah, of course, babe, we'll do that next weekend, or we'll do that in 2 weeks' time because I've got this happening first. And it was just this like moving deadline that was always future focused, and it never sort of happened. And then, of course, time goes on and you get distracted or something else happens, or, I was busy. I was a sort of a single mom working full time, just like life just rolls on. And, I didn't push. I probably should have pushed a bit harder for it. But there were certainly lots and lots of red flags, which I do sort of pull out, as you said, in the narrative, which are good little warning signals maybe to other people that maybe that's something you should like ask a little bit more about, or just question a little harder.
Thanks for listening to Tell Me More. This show wouldn't be possible without you. If you'd like to show your support, please subscribe or follow the podcast on your favourite platforms, and don't forget you can watch full episodes on YouTube and Spotify.